We've all been there. We have a 5 to 10 page long document of experiment results in front of us, and our eyes start glazing over with the tables of numbers and stats. Today, I want to share with you a great mindset for taking on an experiment analysis, a framework to support moving efficiently from experiment conclusion to experiment results, and an approach to talking about experiments in a meaningful way to inform business decisions, design choices, and support an understanding of our customers. I'm Jess from Drumline Digital in Australia, and I've been in experimentation for a while. I started dabbling in the OG Optimizely 2012, for instance. Within organizations, I've built up experimentation and personalization practices, and now agency side, I'm supporting building experiment practices and capability as a business partner. One of my key areas of interest is around this business buy-in. How do we get the business caring about what we're doing and understand the value that it's providing? I don't believe we talk about experimentation as being a form of research enough. Organizations invest heavily in industry benchmarking reports, market research, and consultancy research, and other forms of research to help inform the decisions that they're looking to make about their business. Experimentation is lurking at the back of the room, wanting to put their hand up, but they're talking about themselves in a different way. We try to sell experimentation in as a science, as a new process or approach to working. As we talk about experiments, we're focused on stats and percentages, which can be overwhelming and distract stakeholders from the key benefits and learnings we've achieved through the test. What I'd like to see is that we stop focusing on just the specific performance of this one experiment and start thinking about experimentation as a whole, as a form of research, and telling us about our users on site, how it can inform business decisions on an area to focus on, and support the design choices that we're looking to make. As I progress today, I'm focused purely on that experiment wraps. That is the post-experiment analysis. It might be called an experiment results report, however you'd like to talk about it. We'll be talking about what we're sharing with our stakeholders and how we're talking about that experiment performance. I'm also using web experiments as an example, but this same approach could be used for experiments on all sorts of channels. Search marketing, email campaigns, and even experiments that we're looking to run in a call center. First and foremost, I'm looking to change the way we think about experiment results and how we talk about it with our business. Often I'm seeing this type of results analysis in a test. Experience B had a 10% uplift over Experience A. Recommendation, let's implement Experience B. Feels a bit robotic. It expects the reader at a glance to understand what this test was trying to do and what factors were involved. It doesn't tell me why this is important to the business and doesn't tell me what we've learned about our customers. It doesn't provide us with learnings that we can share with other parts of the business. It doesn't provide us with an understanding of what this actually tells us beyond this one experience. Today we'll talk about moving a little bit more in this direction. What did we learn and what's the data that supports that learning? In this example, value propositions, the factors of change, promote users' confidence to purchase, something about our users, with 10% being more likely to engage with that primary call to action in variation B, the actual performance of the test. We also have the so what. What are we going to do about it? Implement value propositions on the homepage and iterate on which value propositions resonate best. Here we have a job for now, immediate action, implement this change, and then a job for later, an iteration of this test. Which value propositions are going to be the most effective in this space? I don't have to think as much when I'm looking at this. It's all there, set out, ready for me to process. As with any stage in my experiment process, I look to reduce the cognitive load. Don't make me work hard to understand what is happening in this experiment and what I need to get from these results. So how do we get there?
Hi, this is Romo Santiago, founder of Experimentation. To celebrate our 5th anniversary, we are holding weekly giveaways until November 29th. Prizes include books, free consultation services, and even a t-shirt. To enter, simply join Experimentation Slack and fill out the entry form that can be found in the description or through the QR code on the screen. Now back to the session.
Let's start with the fundamentals to our mindset heading into the experiment analysis. Number 1, avoid spiraling down the black hole. Diving into experiment results is a fine art of finding the balance between the rabbit hole and only looking at the surface level results. We want to explore things that are meaningful. We want to uncover what we can, but we don't want to spend 4 weeks finding everything that there ever was to know about this experience and then having to write a 12-page report on what all of those stats entailed. With that in mind, we have 3 key themes that we look to focus on when we're going to answer a RAP. Number 1, let's focus in. Does this confirm or reject the hypothesis? We want to focus on our primary goal. This was the most important part of why we ran the test in the first place. And if we ever feel that we're going too far into the detail, let's bring ourselves back to this moment. Does this actually support the hypothesis of the test? Next, learn. We want to learn. We're not only chasing wins. We want to learn about our users and what does this test tell us about them? How could these learnings of the test be used to support broader business goals or experiences? How have we been able to learn about the user experience on that page and things that we need to change? And lastly, action. We want to be thinking about what we can actually do with the learnings from this test. Along the ride of the experiment analysis, we want to consider iterations and next steps. What can we implement? What do we want to explore further? Is it worth testing any more in this problem at all? So this is the mindset that we want to get into when we're diving into the experiment analysis. But we also need to do some pre-game. Before we dive in, we want to reacquaint ourselves with the test. Often, the person who's analysing the experiment is not the person who created it. These questions can also be asked earlier in the process, so when I'm creating the experiment plan itself. But we want to be revisiting these when we're starting to check back in on the experiment and pull together our analysis. So let's look at the hypothesis or the desired outcomes of the test and ask ourselves, what might it mean if the new variation wins? What might it mean if the control wins? And what might it mean if no effect is seen at all? We want to write these down in a couple of dot points. As an additional bonus, we could ask, why does or will the business care about this test? And this will help frame the approach that we want to take as we're talking about the results that we're seeing and the learnings that we're seeing from this experiment. Importantly, it's also worthwhile doing some background checks. What do we know about this testing period? Were there any outside influences that we should be thinking about as we explore the results here? That could be simple as new releases on devices at the time, or just some of the basics of what the experiment was targeting. It could be some seasonal trends around Black Friday and end of the month changeover of stock. Has there been any other different behaviour that's spotted in other reports that you've been doing within the business that may have an impact here on this experiment? Okay, we're warmed up. We know what the experiment was covering. We know about the time period that this experiment ran. It's now time to look at the results. I have 5 steps here that I use as part of our framework to dive into the results. So let's have a look. The first one is a preliminary read of the results. Face value, what can we see in the results? Is there any statistically significant outcomes? These are something that I might share early on with my experiment team around some preliminary thoughts around the experiment. The next step is the core one. Did this test achieve what it was setting out to achieve? We're looking at our primary metric for the test, and we need to understand, can we confirm or reject the hypothesis for this test? And is that a good or a bad thing? We want to consider our warm-up. What did we say that it would mean if the control won? What did we say that it would mean if the variation won? And what is this telling us about our users? Once we understand that overall performance, we can dive into a few more other options. And the main one here is there any difference in devices? Usually we have a strong view on a mobile versus desktop, so let's check in on that to see if there was any strong differences in performance across those devices, if it's relevant. There may be some other questions that come up as you're looking at this. You may have some other audience types that you want to explore, like campaign and search traffic, for instance. Any of these questions you want to be able to put into a little parking lot that we can review later and understand the importance of diving deeper into them. Next up, we want to explore the secondary metrics. What are some of the other metrics that we were tracking as part of this test? Was there anything significant? Was there anything interestingly insignificant about these results? Sometimes we see that the primary metric may have failed, but these other metrics are showing the value from this test in other areas in the experience or journey. Once again, we want to check in on device differences and also park some questions for later. Another lens that we can lean on is around user behavior. We might have some user behavioral tools that we can use to explore the click and engagement behavior that support success measures of this test. I usually like to choose a couple of different high-level options to view either heat maps or zoning analysis to understand if there's any key behavior that supports some of the previous things that we've learned, or is there anything new highlighted as to how users are engaging with the experience? Are we seeing something in the numbers that is different to the behavioural stats that we're seeing? As part of this, we can take some screenshots to include in the report, and we can park some more questions that we might have if we want to dive into them deeper. Lastly, let's tie up any loose ends. We want to revisit the parking lot of questions that we had and decide if they're important for now or they can wait till later. When deciding if things are important for now, I like to think, will the business care about this? Does it impact the learnings that we've put together and the theme or the learning statements that we're starting to formulate in our mind? Or is this just a curiosity? These questions that we don't decide to tackle now might inform further iterations and improvement ideas later. So we need to find a home for them so that we can reference them later. Lastly, as part of this section, we want to complete revenue calculations if relevant. So if we're seeing some really good information in the primary and secondary metrics, we want to go that will inform a change to sales. We want to be talking about that. We want to complete revenue calculations and share the potential value if this experiment experience was implemented 100%. Now it's time to bring it all together. When I'm talking about experiment results, I have a 2-page document that I like to put together to be able to recap the experiment results and analysis. I usually start with page 2 of this, and this is where we're taking a little bit more of a deeper dive into the analysis that we've conducted. So in here, we want to have some learning statements and information about what we've learned from the experiment results. We also want to share some of the heat maps or zoning analyses and results tables of some of the key metrics to be able to share more broadly. I usually choose about 4 to 5 learning statements or questions that we've answered as part of this test. And then I include some results and further supporting information for each learning statement. So in this example, my learning statement is visual cues support users taking action. As supporting information for that, using search icons and a button to indicate search saw a 73% increase in users using the search function to filter their results. Here we have an overarching statement that we can be supported by the information below. How we got to there is really clear. All of these learning statements and information feed into this results on a page. The results on a page is a really shareable highlights package of the experiment and its outcomes. Reducing the cognitive load, as I said, was tops on my experiment process, and that's where we can lean on our experiment plan to bring in this information. Experience design, hypothesis statements, etc. all come from our experiment plan. It's a simple copy and paste to bring that information across. We have an overall statement that sums up the outcome of the experiment, and this, let's face it, is the clickbait to get the stakeholders wanting to engage more. So in this instance, users are more likely to click a button when it looks like a button. Oh wow, tell me more. We then summarize the learnings from page 2. So in this case, we have the visual cues support users taking action with a 73% increase in searches in the variation. What else did this tell us? Users want to filter their search results. And the so what? We have some recommendations and next steps that have come together. And a key to this experience results on a page is that there is always a next step. Implement, iterate, or abandon are the go-tos, but as you can see here, an idea for a new experiment has come up here as well. Our recommendations are to implement the search button with the icons on the search page, a job for now, and experiment on filter engagement, a job for later. From here, the business is happy. Business says yes, or double yes, thank you AI-generated image. We've had a quick turnaround of experiment results. We have some actionable outcomes from the experiments that can feed into other areas of the business and some learnings we can build on. And in this example, some new experiment ideas as well. So what now? These experiment wraps are super shareable. You can save yourself on work later by using these results on a page to just throw them into business presentations and result sharing, showcases, etc. Attach them to roadmaps, attach them to research repositories, and even use them for data in future tests. Share, get this out there, tell the business what you've been up to and what it means for them, and also reuse this over and over as a simple way to be able to reference each of the experiments that you're running. I hope this helps support you making your experiments matter by thinking about how this research can help inform change and better decisions being made on resources and user experience improvements at your organization. Be sure to reach out on LinkedIn for experiment chats. Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Romo Santiago, founder of Experimentation. To celebrate our 5th anniversary, we are holding weekly giveaways until November 29th. Prizes include books, free consultation services, and even a t-shirt. To enter, simply join Experimentation Slack and fill out the entry form that can be found in the description or through the QR code on the screen.